Yep, okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, everyone, hello, hello. Do you have your lav mic?
Hello, hello. Does it work? Hello.
Okay, hello. Welcome to Control and Yield, Living with Feral Ecologies. And all of these terms will be explained shortly. But we're going to start with the land acknowledgement.
Can you hear us? I would like to acknowledge that Syracuse is the traditional territory of the Six Nations, Haudenosaunee people. Syracuse University and its surrounding areas is home to 4 federally recognized nations, the Oneida, Onondaga, Mohawk, and Seneca, and 2 unrecognized territories of the Cayuga and Tuscarora. We want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the women, men, and children that are original inhabitants of this land and their continued presence here, and the lingering and ongoing iniquities of the structural violence of colonialism. It is our sincere hope that as we study feral ecologies with their global flows of labor, waste, bugs, and energy, we come away with a better understanding of the fraught relationship between the global north and indigenous peoples here in upstate New York and around the world, and start taking anti-colonial actions.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the panel and a whole set of events that we'll describe is being titled Control and Yield, Living with Feral Ecologies. So just a bit about those words before we introduce our panelists. The real word of the day, the kind of central concept here is feral. It's a word kind of worth turning over in your mind a bit. Feral, it's kind of fun to say too, feral, ferality. And it means something between wild and domestic, something that maybe had been domesticated or tamed, but which has veered towards the wild. But feral things never wholly one or the other, never completely domesticated, never completely wild. Ferality is an edge condition. And anyone who has attended to ecologies knows that edges are kind of where the action is, where there's the most possibility of vital and interesting exchange. So domestication means, in the context of ferality, the attunement to human wants, desires, and most significantly, our illusions of control. Yet the feral thing can never fully de-attune. Attunement is kind of a life-altering situation. Feral dogs and cats, for example, they know our ways even when they leave our houses. They visit us. They are kind of like uncanny messengers. Plants, too, can be feral. As Matthew Battles has written in his book, Tree, that focus on the ailanthus, or tree of heaven, and the way it moves into spaces cleared by humans. We know feral plants as weeds, and they fall outside of our circle of care usually. Though many of these so-called weeds have uses for us that are neglected in our new ways of enlightened yet alienated ways of knowing. Yet today's lesson throughout the day is about how we are missing a great and really wonderful opportunity if we see the question of ferality only in this human-centered way, in terms of our relation to our own domesticated spaces, our shelters. As Battles wrote in the book, that Tree book I just mentioned, it's one of our supreme fictions that the landscapes, the elemental forces, the creatures of the world all align in relation to us. Yes, the feral things have been through some attunement to the human, but we also have attuned ourselves to them and could do a lot more in that direction. Such intimacy with the non-human world is an art that some of us are just beginning to learn, and that some others, such as indigenous people throughout the world, have been expert in for a very, very long time. We have in this moment of rising ecological crisis an invitation to flip the script and see the crisis as an opportunity to open up to these attunements, to the non-human world, and to see the landscape of the feral as a particularly productive space in which to make these connections. This is an invitation that Anna Tsing has been making for some time. You can hear it in the very titles of her books. the mushroom at the end of the world, on the possibility of life in the capitalist ruins, the arts of noticing, science as translation, etc. And of course, in her latest project, which is what we're going to hear about mostly today, I think, the feral atlas, and that's the keynote concept, right? Ferality. It is also an invitation that Wael Al Awar has accepted in his practice, I believe. Most notably in the project Wetlands, which we will also hear about today, in which his firm waiwai developed a cement alternative by using the waste products found in the feral landscapes of desalination plants, but also in his practice as a whole, which deeply attends to place and the conditions of place. So today we're going to hear from both Anna and Wael, and then facilitate a conversation between them and between us in this room, and also the participants on Zoom, which we'll get to in a second. And this event this morning will be followed by a panel discussion this evening at 5:15 in the Slocum Hall atrium, in which artist Sam Van Aken, architect Nina Sharifi, and geographer and countermapper, a term I really love, countermapper, Andre Ortega will respond to some of the ideas presented this morning. That event tonight is in person only, by the way, and there's no Zoom link to it. So you'll notice that the speakers today are remote, appearing to us via Zoom. I think Anna's in California and Wael is in Dubai, I think. And it's not that we're like cheapskates and couldn't afford to fly them here. It's that we made an affirmative decision to avoid the carbon emissions of flying. We recognize that there's definitely something lost in that, and that it would be really nice to have them here in person. There's a human warmth you can't really replace in Zoom. But in the spirit of kind of the positive attitudes of today's proceedings, let's focus on the affirmativeness of that. We are reducing our carbon emissions, and this really should be the model for academic conferences, I believe, going forward. So the money we saved through not flying them here is going to a corollary series of events in Hudson, New York, where we will seek to apply what we learn here today to methods of bettering interactions and community access to the waterfront in Hudson, New York, which is itself a feral landscape with former active factories and trains side by side with parks, and right next to the great Mahikanatuk River, which is the Mohican name for the Hudson. So that money that we saved on travel will be spent furthering the work of several nonprofits whom we're working with there. So as I mentioned, this entire package of events, this morning's panel, this evening's panel, and then the events in Hudson are part of this event called Control and Yield, Living with Feral Ecologies. I told you about feral. I just want to quickly say a word about control and yield and why we came up with those terms. So control and yield is suggested by Edouard Glissant's distinction between a form of understanding that he labels with the French comprendre, meaning to grasp or to hold. And it's a sort of understanding for the purposes of control, right? You grasp it in order to control it. Contrary to that, Glissant proposes something which he calls donner avec, which is a French word meaning to give with or to yield. And he proposes that as a form of understanding that's always in relation. It's like a give and take or a mutualism. And this is an ecological understanding. It's a relational understanding. And that's the form of understanding that I hope we'll be thinking with today. So this event was made possible by a CUSE grant from Syracuse University and has been additionally supported by the School of Architecture, the Department of Film and Media Arts in the College of Visual and Performing Arts here at Syracuse, Basilica Hudson, as well as Gabe and Katie Nugent. It was organized by Yutaka Sho, myself, and my partner Susanna Saylor, who's on the Zoom, as part of our Toolshed project in Hudson, and part of the Canary Lab here at Syracuse. So Susanna cannot be here in person today, sadly, but she's there on Zoom. And Susanna, did you want to just say something about the rules of engagement on Zoom?
Hi. Yes, first, a really warm welcome to the now 50 participants who are joining us via Zoom. We're so glad that you could be here today, and welcome. So there is closed captioning available during this session. Please click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen if you would like that. Additionally, We're going to wait until after the speakers give their presentations to do Q&A, but we would really love to hear from people joining via Zoom. Please put any questions or comments you might have in the Q&A. So that's a separate button at the bottom of your Zoom screen you can open up, and I will relay these questions to Anna and Wael towards the end of the symposium. Just a quick note on the schedule. Dr. Anna Tsing will give a lecture first, starting in a few minutes, followed by introduction by Yutaka Sho of Wael Al Awar, who will then give a presentation, followed by dialogue, questions, and discussion. And we also have chat, so if you want to say hello to each other on the Zoom, please do so. Feel free to do so in the chat, but do put your questions in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. Okay, so now we will turn to the presentations and turn to Anna first. And so let me introduce her, and then we'll introduce Wael after Anna speaks. And one thing I guess maybe I didn't convey in those introductory remarks is how excited I am to have both of these people here today and how warmly we welcome them. Their work is truly inspiring. Those words can sound hollow, but it truly is inspiring to me, and I think many people in this room. So Anna Tsing teaches anthropology at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and sometimes also at our house university. I like the informality of your bio, Anna. Her research follows the humble trails of mushrooms into the great economic, cultural, and ecological dilemmas of our times. She's the co-editor of the recently published Feral Atlas, The More Than Human Anthropocene, and author of The Mushroom at the End of the World, which I alluded to earlier, Friction and Ethnography of Global Connection, and also The Realm of the Diamond Queen, Marginality in an Out-of-the-Way Place. I just also want to add before turning it to Anna that on a personal note that Anna is one of several scholars who really precipitated a dramatic change in Susanna and my practice, who really taught us how to stay with the trouble, as Donna Haraway says, as it were, and to find joy and magic in the work of becoming ecological. It can be hard work, particularly because of the knowledge, the deep knowledge and the grief that comes with knowing about living with the climate crisis and the sixth extinction. But Anna has, I think, showed a way forward to how you can engage with that work without getting too bogged down in despair. It's in part by focusing on the present and on places, which she'll now talk about. So thank you very much, Anna, and can't wait to hear from you.
Should I go ahead and speak? I guess so. Thanks so much. It's really a pleasure to be here and a wonderful opportunity to speak with Wael, and also in a program that's going back and forth between design and analysis. Let me share my screen. I didn't know exactly what the organizers meant by the terms control and yield, especially because it didn't say control versus yield. So I tried to come up with a generous interpretation of control as not control over others, but a kind of sensitivity and precision. And yield could be listening to others across lines of difference, even species difference. Perhaps you know the interactive Tai Chi exercise, push hands. That could be, from this definition, a kind of control and yield, and certainly a way to move towards living with feral ecologies. Feral, in my usage, refers to non-human responses to human projects that are outside of human control. Living with feral ecologies requires us to listen to kinds of stories we've repressed or swept under the rug. We learn to believe the boosters of progress who told us only of their dreams for building and design. They didn't tell us about the dangerous feral effects that can endanger life as we know it. Instead of paying attention to what's out there, the architects of the Anthropocene just rolled right over the earth. It was all control and no yield. They were thoughtless in their destruction, and they still are. Perhaps what would-be designers need is what in Japan is called failure science, that is, a science of what's going wrong. Instead of just listening to project boosters, let's pay attention to Earth denizens expressed through feral effects. Analyzing technical problems is never enough because it builds dangerous feral ecologies into our solutions. If we assume technical solutions are neutral, we repeat our mistakes. Indeed, this is where all the disciplines of the academy come in, as well as vernacular knowledge of many kinds. We need humanists, social scientists, artists, and natural scientists rather than just engineers and designers. To understand the feral effects of our building projects, we need attention to the structural and systemic features of the world around us. What builds dangerous feral ecologies into so many projects? In today's talk, I'm going to answer this question through introducing my collaborative digital project, Feral Atlas, the More Than Human Anthropocene. The project collects 79 field reports on the feral effects of infrastructure building, that is, projects that have changed land, water, and airscapes. These reports are entries into a failure science for the Anthropocene. But our project is not just a collection, it's an analytic frame that you too might use for thinking about your own projects. We offer several axes with which to explain the proliferation of dangerous feral ecologies. First, consider how your project fits into systematic political economies for changing the Earth's surface. It's not just one deep water well that's being drilled. There's been a program for drilling out aquifers across the Earth. What is it? We show you several kinds of infrastructure building programs that have changed the Earth's surface, which we call multi-species invasion, terraforming governance, industrial capitalism, and the Great Acceleration. I'll explain more on these later. For the moment, just consider them one way that designers could be working with historians, anthropologists, and others who know something about the shifting structures of world building. A second factor to consider if you're interested in the yield as well as control is the kinds of work we expect of modern infrastructures. A lot of this work is unnecessarily dangerous for life on Earth, and we allow it in part because we're not paying attention. On this slide, I've shown a few of the ways we've structured environmental catastrophe into the built environment. But again, I'll come back to these, so no need to digest them all right now. My point here is that rather than just assuming that everything touted as advanced is great, we should be careful with what we ask infrastructures to do. They can rip apart the fragile symbioses through which life on Earth gains its resilience. A third issue, the non-humans themselves. We're so used to thinking of non-humans as passive tools and resources that we forget their adaptability and autonomous power. Yet non-humans are adapting all the time to the infrastructures humans make. In the process, many become dangerous collaborators in environmental destruction. Just think of how quickly the COVID virus evolves, working together with political resistance against vaccines, as well as the sociology of crowds. Many non-humans have changed from partners in more than human livability to grave threats. We don't listen carefully enough to their stories. If you want to push, also yield. On top of all this, experts are pig-headed. Too often, they think they know all the answers. They consult only a very narrow range of expertise. Sometimes even in their fields, they discriminate by nationality, race, religion, and gender. Beyond their fields, they tend to disdain everything they don't know. In the U.S., the government and universities conspire to promote STEM and throw the humanities, arts, and social sciences into the dump. As a result, solutions to our pressing problems miss historical, ethnographic, and interpretive aspects entirely, adding mistakes on top of failures. Furthermore, academics look down on the often equally empirical knowledge of those outside the academy, especially those from disadvantaged groups such as indigenous communities. And we've accepted such a tiny sliver of empirical research as evidence-based. Dangerous feral effects are only going to increase because of this pig-headedness, which refuses useful knowledge and analysis. In contrast, the Feral Atlas Project aims to bring together field reports from multiple kinds of empirical observation across lines of training and expertise. This is the beginning of a proper failure science of the Anthropocene. We can't possibly know what went wrong if we dismiss all knowledge from anyone who doesn't look just like us. Let me introduce you properly to Feral Atlas. This is Stanford University Press's cover page. We've drawn the feral ecology of your computer screen during the COVID pandemic with prickly little viruses and dying cells. My internet is poor, so I'm not showing you the proper site, which might kill my Zoom, so you'll just see static screenshots. I hope you'll explore the site yourself later. Go to www.feralatlas.org, the address you see in the orange box on the right at the bottom. And then to begin, you click Enter to find our project's landing page. Here, paintings of the feral beings discussed in the atlas float, drift, and bob across your screen. Again, this is just a screenshot. To read a field report, you click on any of these beings, which range from living things such as mitten crabs, to geological phenomena such as mud volcanoes, to elements such as phosphorus, that P on the left. Before getting to the field reports, the atlas takes you on a conceptual journey, a journey intending to train you in this failure science of the Anthropocene. Even before that, however, let me show you some features for readers, folks not used to playing with digital projects. At the bottom of every screen, you see 3 parallel lines. If you click those, you get a new screen. It has a lot of instructions on it. This one, because it's the first one, has links to the introductory material. And importantly, up on the right at the top is a link to the reading room, which gives you a lot of textual material that explains how dangerous feral effects get into the world, how this affects our understanding of the Anthropocene, and why designers and architects might want to think with the category of the feral. Readers might just want to go straight to that. But let's go back to the landing page. There's one more helpful symbol, and it's this key up on the upper left side, which in the real site rotates to get your attention. Our joke is that this is an atlas, so this is the key that gives you the explanatory material. But if you click that, and it's on every single screen, if you click that, you get to our series of indexes, including this interactive index that would be the first thing. But if you scroll down further, you'll get to the reading room, which again has links to lots of kinds of materials that explain the project as a whole, including commissioned essays by some very important thinkers, also a interactive contributors index. And there's more if you kept screening down. Importantly, up on the top left here, you see a little box that says revert at your own risk. Wherever you see that on the atlas, it means return to the landing page. So you shouldn't fear it. You can just click it. Of course, it also means return to business as usual. That is the destructive Anthropocene in which we're mired. Not all the field reports in Feral Atlas are terrors. Some Feral Atlas are rather benign. Consider biologist Peter Funk's report on the little animals found in chlorinated drinking water, which is what I drink in Santa Cruz and possibly what you drink in Syracuse. Chlorine kills bacteria, but not animals, so these tiny animals live on. This is a feral effect, a non-human effect of urban water treatment. However, it's not particularly harmful. Most of us live happily with a digestive system full of little animals. It's the kind of feral effect that teaches us tolerance of other beings. Instead of aiming to wipe them all out, we might learn to live with them. Or consider the marabou storks of the landfills of Kampala, the capital of Uganda, as studied by anthropologist Jacob Dougherty. City planners hate them. They're ugly and they defecate on people's cars. But the salvagers who work the dump looking for valuable recyclable materials appreciate them. The storks eat the organic material, uncovering sturdier materials that have market value. Paying attention suggests, let's not get rid of these storks. Alas, not all feral effects are this benign, and we also need to learn to stop ignoring those dangers. The first step, we argue in Feral Atlas, is to pay attention to the histories that have set in place particularly dangerous ecologies. I'm repeating a slide I showed before, the political economic programs that have produced some of the world's most dangerous feral ecologies. In Feral Atlas, we call these historical programs Anthropocene detonators because they detonate the Anthropocene in all its horrors. Each comes about because of a set of historical conjunctures, but none are frozen in a particular period. Each continues into the present, proliferating its dangerous feral effects. To explain how historical programs of infrastructure building detonate the Anthropocene, Feral Atlas aims to show as much as to tell. Architect and artist Fei-Fei Zhou has drawn 4 landscapes, collages with real historical reference, one for each of the 4 detonators. Here's the one she drew to show multi-species invasion with insets from 2 indigenous artists. On the real site, you can explore the landscape through zooming in and out just as you would for Google Maps. The story can be read from the right, where it opens with the European invasion of the Americas. But it crosses space and time. Behind those Spanish ships, you see the so-called black ships of U.S. Commodore Perry, with which he invaded Tokyo Harbor in the 19th century. Behind that is an Australian agricultural experiment station in the 20th century, a resource center for settler colonialism in Australia. And next to that, a 21st century salmon farm displacing indigenous fishing. As one proceeds inland, more scenes emerge. Australian Aboriginal artist Nancy McDinney has drawn her grandfather's battle with British invaders. Note the eucalyptus trees and the orange termite mounds. This is a multi-species world being invaded. To the left is the Amazon, invaded by cattle ranchers. The yellow drifts are smoke from burning trees, cleared out for cattle. Here are scenes of settler colonialism in North America and a glacier drawn by First Nations artist Andy Everson. Perhaps you can see multi-species invasion as a program for infrastructure building is brought into being by historical events, but it's not limited to a particular period. We're still in the grip of this program. The Anthropocene detonator landscapes in Feral Atlas are designed with small dots indicating where the viewer might find the beings discussed in the atlas. You can play with it as a treasure hunt. When you roll your cursor over one of the dots, you see what it is. Here, the deadly European diseases introduced into North America by European invasion. The user clicks on those small paintings to get to the field reports. Here's the invasive cane toad set over that Australian agricultural experiment station, which introduced the toads supposedly to eat grubs on settler colonial sugarcane plantations. The toads didn't touch the grubs that were, but instead spread across the landscape, killing native animals. Here are the cattle and grasses introduced by settler in Latin America, displacing indigenous peoples and forests. Again, you click to find the field reports. Let's do so. Here's a field report by Puerto Rican anthropologist Rosa Fisek on the invasive pasture grasses planted in Latin America. The roots of those grasses prevent forest trees from sprouting. As the grasses spread, the forests retreat, and with them, the indigenous and Afro-descendant people who called the forest their home. Grasses themselves become invaders, but only as foot soldiers within a human invasion. This is the more than human Anthropocene, in which non-humans, here pasture grasses, become collaborators in the displacement of both human and non-human communities. Here's a painting of the invasive cane toad by Australian Aboriginal artist Russell Ngadiali Ashley. Ashley decided to focus his painting not on the toads, shown on the right, but on the goanna, that is, monitor lizards, that are the ancestors and food for his clan. Ashley's not an academic. He's not an urban artist. He lives in an isolated indigenous community. My co-editor, Jennifer Dager, knows him, and that's how we were able to reach out and ask about his work. He generously painted and wrote for us. In the painting, Ashley shows how the cane toad has affected his people. The great lizards occupy the main part of the painting, where the people are celebrating them, singing and dancing to acknowledge them as ancestral figures. However, goanna are disappearing because of the cane toads. Cane toads have a poison gland in their necks, and predators such as goannas die if they grab the toads. Ashley writes, Yolngu are worried. We have ceremonies and stories for Janda and Bijai, kinds of goanna. But the cane toad came in their secret way, and then they speared the goannas and other animals dead with their poison spear. We still have the law. We can dance for them, Janda and Bijai. But they're gone. We've still got law. We can't forget. We can't forget about the goanna. You see the cane toads on the far right of the painting. The men are trying to hold them off, but unsuccessfully. This is a dangerous feral entity. In Feral Atlas, we're not afraid of telling terrifying stories, but we want to tell them as beautifully as possible. Let me show you one more detonator landscape. This one shows the infrastructure building program we call Terraforming Governance, or Empire, and it includes an inset by Ghanaian architect and artist Larry Botchway, showing the effects of corporate contracts on Ghanaian oil palm smallholders, which make landowners into plantation workers. Our inspiration for this landscape is the history of South and Southeast Asia, as well as Africa. The remaking of land for colonial plantations and water for trade and governance reshaped the Earth's surface. On the left here, British teak plantations in Burma, which peasants were asked to take care for, peasants were asked to care for in exchange for a few years of subsistence crops, here cassava, while the trees were young. That's George Orwell shooting an elephant. Water management through swamp draining, canalization, damming, and the dredging of harbors was essential to colonial governance. We've drawn the metropole as well as the periphery on this landscape. That's Kew Gardens and New York Central Park on the left. On the right, the terrors of the Atlantic slave trade and the ships across eras of colonial exploration and trade. Two quick examples of the feral effects of colonial water management. Historian Michael Vann describes the plague of rats that emerged in colonial Hanoi, today's Vietnam, when the French built modern sewers there. The rats loved the sewers. It was an outrage to the French because the white city was imagined as a showplace of progress, a contrast to the dark native city. But the rats flourished in those modern colonial sewers. What are we building into our architecture and design projects? Are we paying attention to the feral effects? In the Bengal Delta, the British construction of railroads managed to change the Rice Bowl of South Asia into a famine-ridden wasteland, as explained by historian Iftekhar Iqbal. The Delta was rich and flat, a perfect invitation for London investors once railroads became a possibility. but the railroad lines blocked the flow of water. Before this, new land was built every year by sediment, stopping landlords from controlling the fertile areas. The Delta was a place where immigrants came to make their fortune. After the railroads, the flow of sediment slowed. Landlords took control. What once were flowing streams became stagnant ponds. This was a perfect place for the proliferation of the introduced plant water hyacinth, which thrives in stagnant water. Water hyacinth blocked transportation, overgrew paddy fields, and encouraged waterborne disease organisms. The Delta became a mass importer rather than a mass exporter of rice. When supply chains were cut in World War II and landlords hogged remaining stocks, famine ensued. The feral effects of infrastructure matter for the possibilities of life. That's all I can do today on Anthropocene detonators. I encourage you to explore yourselves in Feral Atlas. But let me turn to a second analytic axis in Feral Atlas, which we call TIPPERS, infrastructure-mediated state changes. We're drawing attention to the kinds of work expected of the modern built environment. Too often, we expect the built environment to banish everything except what we plan for it. In fact, the more we expect that banishing, the more dangerous feral effects we encourage. In Feral Atlas, we use one-syllable words from the Nordic Germanic roots of the English language to express the kinds of work that infrastructures and the built environment can do. Read each of these as a verb. These are old, essential kinds of work, but we have figured out a way to change them from life-enhancing forms of work to dangerous threats to life as we know it. Consider burn. Humans have always burned. It's part of our species' legacy. But the burning of fossil fuels has changed everything, including the climate of our planet. It's unclear what can be sustained under these conditions, which are only worsening. In Feral Atlas, we commissioned a set of very short videos to show the power of these transformed modes of work that we expect of modern infrastructures. In the video from which I took this still, by Isabel Carbonell, there's nothing but the gas flame, as if the flame itself encompassed our world. Many of our videos are like this. They show the strange worlds we've created by building life-destroying forms of infrastructural work. Each of these leads viewers, too, to field reports. Among those announced by the tipper burn, you can find a report on carbon dioxide, that is, carbon dioxide produced by burning fossil fuels, among other things. Our report is co-authored by artist Anne-Sophie Milon and geologist Jan Zalazevich. Zalazevich is the head of the Anthropocene Working Group that is deciding whether the Anthropocene should be an official geological epoch. In the field report, he explains the differential impacts of extra carbon dioxide on different ecologies. Milan, in her paintings, makes this vivid, as in this painting, in which carbon dioxide is imagined as a purple cloud. The field report offers one way that failure sciences of the Anthropocene can work across fields of expertise. Here, an artist and a geologist have teamed together. One more tipper, that is infrastructure-mediated state change. This is a still shot from a video poem that illustrates what we call smooth and speed. The video shows the making of an airport. This is the smooth surface of a runway under construction by Armin Linke. We rarely think of the effects of such smooth surfaces, except in allowing our vehicles to go faster. You might be surprised at the number of feral effects such artificial smoothness encourages. One that took me by surprise is the feral effects of marine infrastructure, like the gas platform illustrated here. Gas platforms and other marine infrastructure provide smooth underwater surfaces that are rare in nature. Jellyfish start to clone like crazy on these surfaces, producing the jellyfish blooms that have cropped up around the world. So many jellyfish blooms have erupted that some thinkers worry about a jelly takeover of the oceans. Look to the feral effects of marine infrastructure. Let me turn to the third axis of analysis in Feral Atlas, the abilities of non-humans to become Anthropocene collaborators, and often in the very worst ways. In Feral Atlas, we use the term feral qualities to describe the abilities of non-humans to transform in their interactions with the human-built environment, becoming feral beings. Here are a few groupings of the feral qualities we found among the beings described in Feral Atlas. It's a bit hard to find this axis analysis, so let me spend a moment showing you how when you go to the site yourself. Here's the opening image of a field report by African-American anthropologist Paula Ebron concerning the feral ecologies of the slave ships of the Atlantic trade in kidnapped and enslaved human beings. It turns out that a mosquito that carries dangerous viruses, Aedes aegypti, came to America on these ships. Scholars used to think the mosquitoes were just carried to the New World, but it turns out they were transformed on those ships and in a way that really matters. Aedes aegypti from Africa live in holes in trees where they rarely interact with humans. On the slave ships, whether by evolution or by hybridization with Mediterranean mosquitoes, Aedes aegypti mosquitoes became something new, a mosquito that only hangs out with human water sources and thus effectively carries yellow fever and other viruses from one person to another. This was the new strain that spread across the Americas, carrying disease, and then back to Africa and onward to Asia. Ebron discusses the conditions of the voyage for both people and mosquitoes. The terrors for human beings were linked to the flourishing of mosquitoes. The enslaved people on board had no ability to even slap away those mosquitoes. Meanwhile, the mosquitoes changed. Rapid evolution is the feral quality called superpowers in Feral Atlas. Look for lines in the margins of the field reports. The lines are color-coded in relation to the particular feral quality. If you click that line, new text appears in the margins. The relevant sentences in the main text also turn the color of the feral quality, here red. The extra text adds information about the superpower here of mosquitoes and offers links to other field reports in Feral Atlas that discuss superpowers. One of the links here is to the cane toad report, which I discussed because Australian cane toads have gained longer legs to make use of asphalt roads to spread across the country. Here then is another way to read across field reports to develop a systemic and structural analysis of the Anthropocene while also maintaining focus on the granularity of our planetary environments instead of clumping everything together prematurely into a single thing. That's key work for Feral Atlas. This brings me back to the pig-headedness of experts and how Feral Atlas works against this. The horizontal links that are possible across field reports, like the one between Aedes aegypti mosquitoes and Australian cane toads, open discussion across areas of expertise, here an African-American anthropologist and an Australian Aboriginal artist. Each of the three axes of Feral Atlas offers this kind of work, linking reports. It's one of the main reasons we chose a digital project rather than a book. Horizontal links become much more possible with the digital. We also have other ways of working across disciplinary silos. Many of our feral beings have inspired more than one field report involving disparate nodes of knowledge making. Consider kudzu, a big-leafed vine originally from Japan that's found purchase in the U.S. South, especially in eroded former cotton plantations, along roads, and in other environments deeply disturbed by humans. Plant scientists Erwin Forseth and Ann Innes have contributed a description of the biological qualities that have given kudzu such success in taking over human-disturbed landscapes, as well as the ways this vine discourages native plants once it begins to take over. But these scientists cannot give a feeling for the organism in the same way as Swedish photographer Helene Schmitz, who has contributed a series of haunting photographs of kudzu in the U.S. South, including the ones shown here. Schmidt has her own field report, which displays these photographs. Feral Atlas is making the argument that the photographs and scientific reports offer both complementary and discrepant understandings of the feral ecology of kudzu. Furthermore, the editors have used the feral qualities function to add some of the poetry of Mississippi poet Beth Ann Fennelly, who has written a series of poems called Kudzu Chronicles. Here's one. Kudzu sallies into the gully like a man pulling up a chair to a table where a woman was happily dining alone. Kudzu sees a field of cotton, wants to be its better half, pities the red clay, leaps across the color wheel to tourniquet, sees every glass half full, pours itself in, then over the brim, scribbles in every margin with its green highlighter, is begging to be measured, is pleased to make acquaintance with your garden, which it is pleased to name place where I am not, yet breeds its own welcome mat. Where Schmidt's photography offers an outsider's view, Fennelly's poems takes us into Mississippi social worlds. Feral Atlas brings together these varied understandings of kudzu to offer a better failure science of the Anthropocene. As I've said, sometimes co-authors themselves represent different disciplines. Ecologist Norio Ishida and anthropologist Daisuke Naito teamed together to write about what happened to the waste materials cleared from Fukushima after the nuclear reactor there was destroyed by an earthquake and tsunami. Ishida had begun a citizen science project in which he allowed people to come in with samples of soil or other materials to have them tested for radioactivity. In the process, he found that landscape developers were using wood chips taken from trees killed by radioactivity in Fukushima. The developers spread these chips in public projects across Japan. Anthropologist Naito got involved in the public process and lawsuit that ensued. Together they wrote about both ecological data and social process. Naito invited Takashi Morizumi, an environmental photographer who has documented the radioactivity in everyday items, to provide further ways of seeing for this report. Another set of feral beings with two field reports in Feral Atlas is sea lice, a bloodsucker that gets its food from salmon and other fish. Anthropologist Heather Swanson documents how commercial salmon production in nets gathers sea lice, who take advantage of the great concentration of fish that can't swim away. But sea lice, now in huge numbers, move outside the net, where they attach themselves to wild salmon. Salmon scientists have found young wild salmon with their bodies completely covered with sea lice. Furthermore, the chemicals fish farmers use to keep the lice down are part of the problem. Sea lice have evolved quickly into drug-resistant forms, strengthening them as they navigate rivers and seas in search of wild fish. Control without yielding the solution makes the problem worse. First Nations Chief Ernest Alfred has also written about sea lice, as well as other salmon diseases and parasites for Feral Atlas. Whereas anthropologist Swanson focuses on the global form of salmon farming and its dangers, Chief Alfred focuses on the impacts for his indigenous Namgis community on the coast of British Columbia, Canada. His people have depended on the wild salmon run for millennia. Now the Canadian government has rented segments of the coast to foreign commercial fish farming enterprises. These farms spread not only sea lice, but salmon viruses. Chief Alfred's activist friends dove into the water around a commercial fish farm and took video footage of the bloody water that was being released from the output pipe, shown here. That water is full of parasites and disease organisms, which threaten the wild salmon. He has witnessed the rapid decline of wild salmon in his lifetime. Thus his title here, Long Ago, my ancestors could walk across the river on the backs of salmon. Taken together, the scientific report from Swanson and the life history reflections from Chief Alfred help us understand the feral effects of salmon farming, which both spread around the world according to commercial logics and differentially affect salmon and people in particular places. Here is the Feral Atlas argument then about plurality. Only many kinds of knowledge ecologies taken together can properly show us the Anthropocene. A description of the Anthropocene involving only one form of expertise is likely to be quite wrong in its suppositions. I've failed to mention so far the big story of the Anthropocene for many scholars and commentators, climate change. Far be it from me to deny its importance. But the Anthropocene is many things, including the extinctions of mass numbers of species, the spread of toxins and radioactivity, the threat to ecologies from coral reefs to rainforests, and the inextricable bind between social injustice on the one hand and environmental destruction on the other. Climate change appears understandable in relation to a single planetary model because of the advances of Earth scientists who've shown how water, air, and carbon circulate around the globe. This is important, but it's not enough. Feral Atlas argues that the Anthropocene is granular, that is, constituted in many ecological patches, some of which I've described in my talk today. Patches are not autonomous. On the contrary, they come into being in globe-sweeping projects of power and profit. They interpenetrate, they overlap, they shape each other. However, it's important to understand their separate dynamics. If we care about social justice, we must start our analysis with the patch, where we see how justice and environment become a package. Salmon farming profits multinational corporations and deprives indigenous communities of their livelihood. I could go on. Meanwhile, too, patches show us what can be done. If we don't want radioactive parks, we must stop radioactivity-killed trees from being the source of landscaping wood chips. Each field report in Feral Atlas offers insights on what solutions are possible. But let me return one more time to diversity and inclusion. These are important for justice. They're also important for better science and policy. Consider those mosquitoes that evolved on the slave ships of the transatlantic trade. Learning their phylogenetic identity was already a work of love done by biologists. But it took an anthropologist working on the history of enslavement to understand the consequences for the lives of enslaved people, as well as the making of disease environments in the Americas. Similarly, it took a historian to connect research on water hyacinth and famine in the Bengal Delta. We need a diversity of knowledge formations to get the Anthropocene right. In the field of architecture, it's an important time to consider feral effects. I return to those rats that made use of pipes to flourish in the white cities of colonial Indochina. And what about Argentine ants, which seemed at first to be a noxious invasive species in California, where I live? Biologist Deborah Gordon writes in Feral Atlas of her discovery that it's only in the midst of houses that Argentine ants are so terrible. In the forest, native ants fight back. Houses privilege Argentine ants, just as massive disturbance privileges kudzu. There are few things we rather like, such as green frogs in New England, as studied by biologist David Skelly and his associates, that seem to do just fine in puddles and pools of suburban America. Wood frogs, in contrast, go into rapid decline. Some live and some die. This is a reason to pay attention. Control and yield, a failure science for the Anthropocene. We must learn to live with others. While there's no way to avoid feral ecologies, we have some choices to make about which ones we and our non-human allies can stand to live with. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for your terrifying and beautiful presentation. I have to out my co-organizer, Ed, who is the descendant of Commodore Perry, who invaded my town, Tokyo, and now we are creating this assemblage here. So such is the world we live in. It was really wonderful. We wanted to always combine the theory with practice in this symposium, and it was a great way to introduce the concept of feral. And now I want to turn to Wael, who is practicing and performing ferality in his architectural projects. Let me switch to gallery. Okay. Wael Al Awar is the founder of waiwai in Dubai, whose architectural practice layers natural phenomenon, time, structure, and landscape, all coalescing in an architecture that is more than man-made fabrication and that remains open to adaptation and appropriation. The firm has worked on prominent cultural institutions, including Dubai's Jameel Arts Center and Jeddah Waterfront Sculpture Park, Al Mori Home, Al Waka Mosque, CICOL, High D3, and Jeddah's High Jameel. As most of our audience knows, Wael was the chief curator of the Wetland, the National Pavilion of the United Arab Emirates, which received the Golden Lion Award in the 17th Venice Architecture Biennale last year. We asked Wael to join us today and converse with Anna because of his approach to both architectural research and form making. The building blocks made of salt as an industrial desalination waste in the wetland are among many other materials waiwai researches and deploys in feral ecologies. It is certainly clever and necessary to make useful resources out of seemingly useless waste. But waiwai did not stop there. They intentionally avoided making rectangular masonry units modeled after typical clay bricks, and instead pursued a structure by piling up irregularly shaped elements that found their own stability in the construction process. The result is a feral structure, more resilient than the pre-calculated ones, made in the marriage between human interventions and non-human material and geometrical behaviors. Waiwai shows us a way to create joy in what we already have, an attitude designers need today. Please welcome Wael Al Awar.
Let me unmute myself. Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be speaking with Anna Tsing soon after this presentation, and I hope to be as eloquently spoken as Anna was. My English is a bit jumpy, but I'll do my very best. So I'll start with I decided to add a little intro of my work and waiwai's work, also some projects and our design philosophy before jumping into Wetland, just to give it some context. And I understood there are quite a few students also attending this lecture, so that would be also nice for them to see how that connects with the realization of work that we do and produce at the office. So, you know, we have 6 design principles that we run by and think thoroughly through every project. Sometimes some are highlighted more than others in particular projects, but in general, we try as much as possible to incorporate all these design principles into each and every project. So I will start by just giving you a brief introduction to each principle and an example of how it appears in a project before jumping into the last principle, which is the research behind wetland. The first principle is cultural and contextual sensitivities, and I think this is a very important thing that is key to us. I am from Lebanon and my partner is from Japan, my business partner, and I am currently based in the UAE in Dubai, where we established waiwai. So it's very important that we understand just, not in the past, in the not very old past, our mothers used to be very different from one another and the way they used to look and how culture was really embedded into our identity. And the first lady, the Lebanese woman in her outfit, you can no longer, unfortunately, see that in Lebanon. It's completely disappeared. Everyone is very much westernized. But yet what I admire in both Japan and the UAE is that you can still walk in Japan and you can still walk in the UAE and see women dressed in their cultural attire and dress. And it's very important to think about these and how they relate to the production of space and architecture. So not only the sensitivity towards culture, but also context, and most importantly, one of which is climate, and understanding how, the different geographies have different climatic conditions and different relations to the sun and to the weather itself. So we look at that also in very much depth and detail to ensure that each project really responds and adapts to the climate and context within it's situated. The second principle is our interest in phenomena such as natural light, activity, wind, and time. And these are very important elements that add to the production of space or to the value of space and architecture. This shows a study for a mosque, the Al Warqa Mosque that we did in Dubai, of how we study in detail the sunlight through either using a high side light, which is the first image on the left, or a top light, meaning a skylight, the image on the right. So we produce models that we put under the sun and really study accurately with the movement of the sun based on the month and the time of the day to ensure that the intensity of the sun and the movement of the sun is also designed carefully within the space itself. And here you can see the final image of the built mosque this is naturally lit 100% from the sky, sunlight, and there is no artificial light within this photo through a very clear and deliberate design study and intention. A third principle is the synthesis between architecture and landscape. And I believe that, the definition is maybe I don't know about the English definition, but I don't think the two should be so clearly defined. I believe both are the same of one another. And I don't see the difference between architecture and landscape, and they coexist somehow. This photo is by Pieter Bruegel of an activity scene of children or a town hall. And this is a photo of a market, a 100-year-old market in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. And the space of gathering through the souk, or the outdoor space that brings people together, was behind the inspiration for the Hay Jamil project in Jeddah, where the whole project is really designed around a single courtyard that brings people together from all these different multidisciplinary activities happening around, as well as hosting music festivals, outdoor cinema events, etc. So actually the heart of this building is an outdoor space and not actually an indoor architecturally defined space as we stereotypically try to define architecture. The fourth principle is the architecture beyond functionality and program, the folly. And that is important also to think beyond the pragmatic sense of architecture This is a project we proposed for the Beirut Museum of Modern Art. We're using the concept of komorebi, which is it's a Japanese word meaning the light filtering through the leaves of trees, to create these outdoor exhibition spaces and halls for people to exhibit art. And this was not actually a requirement within the brief, as you know, museums want to exhibit art in a very pragmatic way within white boxes and controlled light environments, while here we were proposing something that is more of a landscape space or a natural phenomenon space rather than a very artificial space. And that's the meaning of komorebi. And then another principle is the diagram of form, and not the diagram of relation, and not the diagram of form. And that's very important, that we do not start with a form and then try to adapt the program and the requirements into it, but rather we start with relations. How do we want the light to be within the space? How do we want the activity to be in the space? How do we want the landscape to interact with the people and with non-humans also within space, or the art itself? And then based on that, all these criteria together is what forms or creates the final outcome of any building or project that we approach. Finally, it is the final principle is about sustainability, constructibility, and then ecological material sourcing, which we have started to term as the future vernacular. And this is, I think, I will introduce and explain wetland. And as you can see, this comes really from a desperate architectural practice that is building today. We build over 35 to 40,000 square meters of projects per year, and we really want to do good to the environment and not really do bad to it. Then, as practicing architects, how do we really address that? And this, a couple of years ago, we started thinking deeply about and trying to really find solutions to the projects that we produce. Unfortunately, not every project today has the best ecological footprint, but we in our minds think that if we are able to produce something that in the next 5 to 10 years can have a much better impact, then that is something that is great. So we don't have to be fixated on the present situation, but working towards a better future, and that is what is very important. So the chief curator of the Venice Architecture Biennale, Hashim Sarkis, raised the question, how will we live together? And this question could be looked at in so many different ways. How can we live together as humans and non-humans? How can we live together today through the social inequalities? How can we live together today through these massive massive migrations that we have? But as a practicing architect, it was important for me to really address the issue also of us humans and the planet Earth, the climate. And I wanted to focus on that as a priority within the research of wetland. So before going to Venice, this is a slide of the Mos Eisley Cafe from Star Wars. Before going to Venice, I just want to let you know how do I see Venice. I see Venice as a gathering place where creatures from all over the world come together to have dialogues and conversations. So the main idea, the main thing going to Venice was, what are the questions that I want to take to Venice to dialogue with fellow architects and colleagues? What are the main issues that need to be addressed today, knowing that we live an ecological crisis that needs to be addressed immediately, and there is no more time for nostalgic approaches, but we have to be very concrete, very pragmatic, and very systematic. So we took to Venice an exhibition under the title of Wetland, and later I will explain more how why wetland, how the word came about, but also the word wetland breaks a stereotypical image already from of the Middle East, it's not, I would say, the Gulf. The UAE is the Gulf, which is a very desert landscape, but rather coming with a word that is completely opposite to that is important, and that already sets the tone where we have to re-question stereotypes and re-question the ways that we are educated about certain things and need to look at things from our own perspectives, and that is important. And at the same time, Venice is a wetland, so that also takes a connection for broadening the image of broadening the conversation or the discourse behind the conversation we are taking to Venice. So now I'll be moving more into the project itself and how the research evolved during the whole process. So as a practicing architect, as I said, we have a problem. Today, we are 7 billion people on the planet, and it is projected that we will become 11 billion people by 2050. And this projection is most probably true and something that we can no longer disregard. So how do we build our future cities? Knowing that we are moving through such an extremely rapid growth, and the amount that we need to build is just tremendous. It is insane. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation issued a report in 2019 stating that we will have to build the equivalent of one New York City every month over the next 40 years to accommodate this growing population. So the question becomes, how do we build this how do we build for this growing population, knowing that we are already in a ecological crisis and and the climate as an extreme stress and distress, and we have to find new ways for that. So we need to also understand a little bit what is the responsibility of the construction industry also and architecture on this ecological crisis. So first, if we look at emission, and I will just be very quick through these, not going much into detail, but it is important to understand that the construction industry is responsible for 40% of global emission, and that the cement industry alone is responsible for 8% of global CO2 emission. And once you do a little bit more research, you come to learn that concrete is the second most consumed resource on Earth after water. It is the facts just become kind of shocking somehow to really think that we humans actually, after water, consume concrete. It's just insane. And then we have to understand that cement also is not only used in architecture, but mostly also in infrastructure and mega projects. And it is we have to look at the issue not through only the building typologies, but cement as a material by itself, and understand the problems and properties of that material. And unfortunately, for the last 100 years, even more, 120 years, we are still using the cement in the same ways that we have always used Portland cement specifically. I will explain a little bit more of the problem of cement also, is that the ecological footprint of cement is that to produce 1 ton of cement, knowing that 1 ton of cement really does not build much, it builds a column of half a meter by 4 meter high, produces 1 ton of CO2. And that 1 ton CO2 needs 1 tree 40 years to absorb that amount. So if we're talking about if this material was invented today, for example, no government, no legislator will approve this material just due to the fact of the ratio of 1 ton of production produces 1 ton of emission. It's really archaic material that is that should not be allowed anymore, and it is a problem that we really need to address immediately. So moving from emission, we go also to the concept or the idea of extraction that the construction industry is based on. We consume from our planet in order to build today, and we actually extract, the construction industry is responsible for 40% of the extraction that happens from our finite planet. Then if we look at energy also, the story is not any better. The construction industry is responsible for 40% of energy. And from that energy, 86% is burning of fossil fuels and 14% is from renewable energy. So we're still very far behind from really having a green energy or any good energy for the production of material. And finally, excess and waste. It is across the board, the construction industry, I would say, is, and this is also through research done by Dr. Philip Bloch at ETH Zurich, that, the responsible for 40%, I would say, across the board. And that, these are things that need to be immediately addressed if we are really looking at the concrete change in the coming years. Now comes the question of what was, the role of the 20th century architect in all of this, and what was the responsibility of the 20th century architect in all of this. This is a photo I found online, and it's just a brilliant photo that includes so many great architects. But what I like about this photo is that they all, there's so many come from so many different backgrounds, but yet they all agree to wear the similar attire or the similar suit, to a certain formal event, except you can see like Arata Isozaki having a little difference in his bow tie. And I think Rem is not wearing a bow tie at all. So he's starting to break out from this conformist image or standardized image of the modern architect. But I think they did not have the problem of the climate we have today, and they did not really need to address that problem. CO2 is fairly a new issue that has risen, and that the 20th century or the modern architect was not really challenged with. But I also like to present this letter that a few months ago, where Jacques Herzog wrote a letter to David Chipperfield answering a question, because David Chipperfield was the editor of the Domus magazine, and he had sent a letter to Jacques with a question. And I will briefly read through the letter. Is that he answers the question: "Dear David, you ask me what we architects should do about the unmistakably impeding environmental catastrophe, about social inequality, about poverty, about the degradation of this planet's resources, about the pandemic, which has placed us in an almost surreal mode that begs description, all of which is being managed by political leaders whose cynicism and absurd actions put the Marx brothers to shame. Dear David, the answer is nothing." So then that leads me to the question of what is the responsibility of the 21st century architect? What is my responsibility as an architect practicing today? I cannot accept that I have no responsibility within that, especially towards the climate or social inequality or any other form of inequality on a construction site. We have to really change our mindset and redefine the image of the architect and the roles and responsibilities of the architects of the 21st century. So in order to move forward, I really needed to think of how could I, as a practicing architect in the GCC in the Gulf, really start building projects that do not use cement and are very ecologically good. Many architects today are turning back to the vernacular, because the vernacular again offers a connection with the land and avoids using the modern materials that such as cement, which are synthesized in laboratories. So you had, for example, the Philippine Pavilion, which received an honor mention also at the Biennale, presenting a pavilion that was made from sustainable wood farming with community engagement, of course. So also did the Nordic countries pavilion. They proposed also a pavilion going back to their vernacular methods of building with sustainable food farming. Although I also don't believe that this offers really a solution, because when we know that we have to build the equivalent of one New York City every month over the next 40 years, moving from 7 billion to 10 billion people, vernacular is not going to be our way forward. So we will have to find another way. But of course, it still is a very good solution to consider. So I started looking at wanting to understand what is really the problem in Portland cement, and how could that be really addressed. And once I started looking into detail about that, I quickly learned that actually the problem in Portland cement is in the binder, in the glue that connects the minerals together, and it is in lime. And the problem happens is that when you convert limestone to lime, there's a huge and tremendous release of CO2. And it is a chemical reaction and not an energy intensive process that is requiring a lot of fossil fuels and thus releasing a lot of CO2. No, it is actually just a chemical reaction of converting CaCO3 to CaO that releases CO2 molecules at a ratio of 1:1, which is absurd. So then, knowing that the problem is in the binder, in the glue, then the question becomes, is there a way of finding another binder or another glue that could be used instead of lime in producing a cementitious mix? So the thing is you have to turn to geology, because this is where you find your glues, your minerals, in the geography and the geology. So I turned to the geography of the UAE and started really looking at the land and trying to understand what are the different minerals that compose this geography, and is there anything within this geography that could replace lime as the binder in cement. And this is where I came across the sabkhas of the UAE. And sabkha is an Arabic word meaning salt flat, which is found in the English dictionary. And this is the connection actually to wetland, because sabkhas are classified under wetlands through the Ramsar Convention globally. And it's very important to note that 5% of the UAE geography is made from sabkhas. So it actually constitute a huge part of the environment. So I was immediately captivated by the cementitious crusts that you see in the salt flats, and quickly, understood that there should be some mineral in there, a glue in that is gluing together all these minerals. And the question quickly became, what is that mineral in there, and could that offer some insight into replacing lime as a material in cement. And at the same time, I took I wanted to learn more about these geographies and try to understand what are they, how do they work, and how are these cementitious crusts being formed. Actually, sabkhas are formed by the evaporation of a high underground water table, and that deposits these minerals onto the surface. But they are they are living environments. Actually, they are environments that are constantly changing with the movement of waters and constantly changing with the weather itself. So they also have a microbial mat within them, the sabkhas of the UAE. So I will later explain it's a global phenomenon too. But the ones in the UAE, they actually also absorb CO2. So 1 square meter of sabkha absorbs more CO2 than 1 square meter of rainforest. So they're actually assets to the country that are of extreme importance, and they were listed on the UNESCO tentative list of World Heritage Sites in 2018. So as I said, they are, sabkhas are global phenomena. They're not local phenomena. So you have sabkhas, you have salt flats in Ethiopia, you have in California, in Bolivia, but each have different minerals within them. The one in Bolivia, I stopped here because it's actually the biggest asset for Tesla, and they take the lithium from the Bolivian sabkhas to produce batteries. So they are also targeted by industries, and that is very important to note, as I do not promote the extraction of sabkhas in the project, but just learned from them and tried to understand as much as possible and found an alternative way in what I will explain soon. And this is in Tunisia. And then I started learning that actually a lot of vernacular architecture was built from sabkhas. Unfortunately, not in the UAE, but in North Africa. There's a town called Siwa, which is in Egypt on the border of Libya. And it's 800 years old, actually 900 years old, still standing. And it was all built from the local salt flats found there. And this is a photo from Star Wars again. And actually, this architecture is built from sabkhas, and this is in Châteaujourde in Tunisia. So it is not a stage set. So it was also actually vernacular architecture of the region that, I mean, it was very interesting to know later also that when they shot Star Wars, there was another version shot here in the UAE. It was also shot on a sabkha site. So there's this, mystical thing about salt flats and sabkhas that connects it with somehow the future or the unknown in a way. As I stated before, they are carbon sinks, so we cannot promote their extraction. Hence, we really need to preserve them and conserve them. And then the question comes that, sorry, I jumped a very important point, is that through the research, I learned that, the mineral that is binding these agents together is actually magnesium oxide, yeah? And that is the glue that is in the sabkhas that is insoluble, because there are soluble minerals and insoluble minerals, and magnesium oxide is the insoluble mineral that could work as a new cement, as a new binder in a cementitious mix. So of course we cannot promote and go back to the same ideology of modern architecture and construction methods of extracting from the planet. So we had to rethink and shift our thought process of trying to source and find magnesium oxide from elsewhere. Quickly, we came about actually the desalination industry in the UAE. The UAE is the third largest desalinator in the world. The first largest is Saudi Arabia, USA is the second, and the UAE is the third. The MENA region is responsible for 50% of global desalination. So we have this huge waste product currently in the region that is being currently dumped back into the Arabian Sea. The UAE alone dumps back the equivalent of 4,800 Olympic-sized pools of reject brine into the sea, which is already, you know, completely destroyed the aquatic life in the sea, you know, and the coral life. All the fish have changed. It's exactly, you know, the effects, the feral effects of these huge industries. We have to acknowledge the fact that we cannot stop desalination. It is impossible. The whole world is also moving more and more towards desalination as we have a bigger water crisis on our hands in many parts of the world, and especially in the Gulf. They started with no water, so basically existence really relies on desalination and the fact that they have fossil fuel to be able to desalinate and subsidize the costs for that. So then once we identified that reject brine could be a material that could be identified as a material to produce architecture, we started collaborating with different universities on different projects to see how, you know, we could push the project and material research further. The first collaboration was with the American University of Sharjah Biochemistry Laboratories, where we started to study what are the different minerals that are found in Sabkha salt flat sections, and also in parallel study the different minerals that are found in the reject brine of desalination water, and how could these minerals be used in producing materials and finishes. So that was one coordination, and with this knowledge, we started producing experiments in our office also in very simple ways, trying to see, you know, what different outcomes and results come from these different salts, especially that we know some salts are insoluble, some salts are soluble. So we were very conscious of making sure that we were in control at the end of producing something that was insoluble. But still, we were interested at looking at the soluble, insoluble aspects of finishes, not structural elements. So this is all work, actually, I have to say, done by students and interns. So this is not work done by really specialists all the time. Some work, yes, of course, but a lot of the work was really done with students and interns and the team at the office. And some very interesting studies that we did also in the initial stages was by just simply submerging fabrics into the reject brine of desalination water, because these are highly saturated salt solutions. Something that works in tension starts to work in compression and can become a structure by itself in just a matter of 48 to 72 hours, actually. But the problem with this is that we knew that this was a soluble structure and is not offering a permanent solution to the issue. So, but nonetheless, we were still interested in looking at the whole aspect of everything, because sometimes you really need quick shelters or architecture that is temporary and not necessarily that has to be permanent. And at the same time, we started also studying from these different minerals that we started extracting from reject brine, the different finishes that could be applied to structure and architecture, meaning that we're not only looking at the cement, but also the wall finish, the floor finish, and the aesthetics of that, as well as applying applications and mixing that with natural fibers. Because I must say that these are salt-based minerals, meaning that they cannot be reinforced with steel because steel will corrode. So we had to look at different reinforcement methods. And in that case, we started looking at palm fibers, since it is an abundant waste also in the UAE. We also, different experiments, but I love also in the temporary architecture that these materials and structures that were being formed were really reacting to the environment somehow, very much in tune with nature. The crystals will grow over time, and the architecture was in dialogue with its context and its surrounding. But we didn't want to stop there. The task at hand was to really find a contender and a replacement to the problem of Portland cement, and if we could produce a cement that is insoluble and we could use to build with bigger structures in the GCC. So we turned to a collaboration with NYU Abu Dhabi, and specifically the Amber Lab, which is an advanced material building research laboratory, which they are hardcore material scientists that were already also looking at extracting different minerals from reject brine, and specifically magnesium oxide, and producing a cement from the magnesium oxide itself. So that collaboration was really fitting to one another. So we immediately started sharing notes and started prototyping and studying how we could produce a large-scale structure from this material, because these first experiments done in the laboratory where only these cubes are 5 by 5 centimeters. So very small samples that we were able to produce from the reject brine of desalination water that were insoluble. The first tests showed that they were very weak, so that means that they could not take any compression strength, but through carbonation, meaning exposing them to CO2, they could perform to the equivalent of Portland cement. So meaning that this material needs to absorb CO2 in order to gain its structural strength. It can absorb a 1-to-1 ratio actually of CO2, but it only needs to absorb 18% of its mass to reach the strength to perform to the equivalent of Portland cement. Here, I'll show you a video that we took in Venice at the contractor office, where you see the guy holding one block that is carbonated, one block that is not carbonated, and you will see immediately the difference. You see that the block that completely shatters is the uncarbonated, while the one that is carbonated stays intact. What is carbonation? Very simple. The image on the right shows CO2 tanks that were connected to a storage room where the modules were placed for only 72 hours to absorb CO2. But in a real case scenario, the production facility could be built near the desalination plant, and you just take the CO2 from the smokestack directly to carbonate the material. So we really didn't have to, but we were pushed in Venice to produce something very quickly. Now I move to the last part. I'll try to speed things up, is that the final collaboration was with the University of Tokyo, and the reason for that was to produce a prototype that will be exhibited in Venice. So we had done a lot of material research, had a lot of this new material that we wanted to discuss and debate with the world. But we needed to present it in a way that raises a lot of questions. And most importantly was, if we are resetting our systems and finding new ways, do we go back to the same systems that we have, or do we produce new systems? So the prototype was designed as an homage to the vernacular architecture of the UAE that was built from corals. So the vernacular buildings of the UAE were built from corals. So we thought that would be a great connection back to the vernacular, and would be the antithesis. What we wanted to produce was a prototype that was the antithesis of modern architecture, meaning that there was no drawing in the prototype that we produced. It was built through dialogues and conversations, and it was also all drawn by hand into soil. So we would tell builders, imagine the coral shape, draw it by hand into the soil, and then we will pour the cement to produce the module shape. So here you see these are all students also working at Tokyo University Lab in building these corals, and each one would see a coral differently. So the forms were always changing based on the different perceptions of what a coral is. And the reason for that is the question of how do we bring culture and identity back into architecture, and how do we connect back craft to architecture, and trying to negate the issue of standardization and globalization of material, and the procedures that we had learned as architects, where I would be obsessed with controlling the site to a one-to-one detail, and not giving the builder any chance to think for himself, where they just become robots in the construction system, while eliminating all form of craft on site. And then these similarly, we produced prototypes also in Dubai. So we had students in Tokyo working on prototypes, students in Dubai working on prototype, exchanging knowledge. That was also important. And it is about collective thinking and not the thinking of one individual. But it was all lab managed and directed through the laboratories of Jun Sato and Obuchi-san in Tokyo University. Then finally, we took the exhibition to Venice under the title of Wetland, and the concept of the exhibition was to show the tension between the industrialization and the landscape and the natural environment. And this is the photo of me walking on a sabkha, and the power lines were above my head, and my feet were was in this warm saltwater spa-like natural environment, and above me the buzzing of the cables really gave me anxiety after 10 minutes. So I wanted to bring that feeling also to the exhibition in Venice. So we commissioned Farah Al-Qasimi, Emirati, New York-based artist, to take photos of these salt flats and how they are really fighting against modernization and infrastructure. And you can see in the background all the desalination plants and also the oil refineries and production plants. And then finally, we produced a prototype in Venice that was all built in Venice and produced in Venice. So we shipped nothing from anywhere in the world. All material was always produced locally. What we did was just have to buy the magnesium oxide from the local industry, from local chemistry laboratories. And then we reinforced them using natural fibers. In Dubai, we were using foam. There we use palm trees. There we used from natural waste of indigenous trees. And the 2,400 modules were stacked through conversations, as well as with the aid of high-end technology. So again, when you go to Venice, you're producing a structure that is open to the public. We had 600, 700 visitors a day within the exhibition. So we needed to prove that this structure is also structurally stable. And hence the support of the laboratory by Obuchi-san was amazing, because they reprogrammed devices from the gaming industry that would actually scan the structure as it's being built and upload it onto a computer model that is calculated, and then we would continue construction. So it was also redefining the way we build things. I mean, why do we need to continue to build in the same ways? We can re-question that too. And here I'd quickly like to show you the device that come on this works with me at waiwai. And that device is actually lighting blue. It means that he is within the model space of the form that we had outlined. Maybe it will become a bit more clear in this video. So we have 4 sensors that are attached in the ceiling, and these 4 sensors project the outline of the form that we need to build, because we have a limited amount of material to work with, and it's a site-specific installation. So these sensors project the outline of the form, and the devices that you wear in your hand tell you if you are within the model form or outside of the model form. Here you see these devices that are projecting that hologram form, and at the same time, they scan the placement of the modules and produce an as-built model that is being uploaded on the computer in the back. And then as we go ahead, every 10-15 minutes, we wait, double check the model. We know if there's any weakness or structural instability. If not, then we continue to build. Finally, these are photos from the exhibition at Venice. And here my presentation comes to an end. I hope I didn't exceed my time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wael. That's really, I mean, it's completely amazing technology. I have tons of questions. I think that, I mean, one of the fallbacks of doing this virtual presentation and bringing someone from the United Arab Emirates and someone from California together, we have to find a common time zone. So we are constrained, I think, to ending at around 1, because this room then I think gets reused. There's not much time. So in the time that we have remaining, what I'd like to do is prioritize any questions that you have for each other, Anna and Wael, and kind of get out of the way a little bit. If you have questions in the audience, or if there's questions in the chat, let's save those for this evening for the most part, and we can discuss them then. So I know, Anna, you're looking like you're not part of the evening because of the time difference. You're welcome to join us, I guess, but it'll be a conversation among some professors here that will process some of this information. We'll give you a full report. But at any rate, I'd like to step out of the way and have you guys talk to each other if possible. Okay, thanks.
Do you want us to just talk, or do you want to do it more formally? Can you explain your idea?
Wael, do you have any questions for Anna, or Anna, do you have any questions for Wael?
Sure. I mean, I'm a big fan of Anna's work, and I've been, always, whenever I have some time, I love to go on the Feral Atlas and browse around. And I have, of course, tons of questions, and I really, would like to think out loud, is that I would really like to know now, after you've established the Feral Atlas online, is it something that you still continue to add stories to? I know you have 79 field reports now on there. Is there work that's ongoing on adding to the database? And how does the system work? Are you actively yourself always looking for these stories? Or I'm really interested in the setup and how the life of the Feral Atlas has taken a life of its own, maybe.
Well, thanks for that question, and because it's a great question about process, and maybe I'll begin with what we did, which was we never put out a call for papers. That it was a very humble project at first that was just almost like a lab report for the small group that I was working with at that time. And then every time I was at a workshop or conference, and people would run up and say, "I've got a Feral Atlas story for you." And so it like those salts that you were generating. It just accrued and got bigger and bigger and bigger. And before we knew it, we had this giant thing on our hands. Now, because of our agreement with Stanford University Press, it can't in itself get bigger, although I'm very much hoping that a much perhaps more technologically simple sister website could get set up so that people could keep adding on to it. Because that seems really possible. I think the big continuation that the co-editors or co-curators have figured out is that some people like to play online, but a lot of people don't, and that we've lost readers. So what we're doing is we're going to take out some of the key ideas and just do a more conventional book with some of those key ideas that hopefully could be a partner to the website for all those people who have trouble navigating it, which turns out to be many people, especially people in the academy, have a lot of trouble with the website because it is playful and interactive and open-ended. So hopefully together, a little book, almost a booklet, which will keep the life of the atlas going. So
smart. It's a different kind of reading that you have to learn how to do when you navigate that site. It's a very valuable kind of reading. You have to learn how to slow down, but sometimes you come to the internet with this accelerated attention span.
Right, I agree completely that it also requires a kind of handiness with the internet that young people have and sort of older people mainly don't. So lots of people don't get farther than the landing page because of that. So hopefully together, they can work together. Let me say, Wael, I think this project is brilliant. It's fantastic. And I'm just absorbing all the details. Even though I prepared by looking into it, I still was completely blown away by all the pieces that you've put together. From all the ways that you've used natural products to reinforce instead of the steel, carbonization to make it stronger, that every piece has had so much work in thinking about it. So it's going to take me a few minutes to get my mind around the right questions, but I wanted to go back towards the beginning and ask something when you kind of rejected the vernacular architecture as not good enough. I mean, it seems to me in cities all over the world, especially in the global south, vernacular architecture is everywhere in the poorer neighborhoods that are created either with discarded pieces of this and that, creating a new kind of vernacular, or the use of those old materials, including bamboo and mussel shells and guadua, and all those kind of vernacular materials are still very much with us in very dense urban settlements. And I just wondered what you thought about that in relation to your future imaginations.
Actually, yes. Thank you for bringing that up, because I didn't mention one of the key questions that I raised at Venice is that can we consider the industrial wastes of our cities as the new vernacular? And this was the question I raised in Venice to many curators, because materials found in nature as vernacular, maybe bamboo is a very good source because it grows fast, doesn't need much watering. But when you talk about sustainable wood farming, sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't because the wood needs water. And if you have a water crisis, how does that work? And it is, I think, a redefinition of the vernacular that we need to question. If it is not based on an extraction ideology where we are consuming again from the earth and depleting its resources, causing other effects to take place that are harmful, and we don't know. The problem is that, you know, when you do an action, you don't know the answer to the action, and we only find out the answer 20, 30 years later and say, oh, you know, and that is the problem with the ideology, I think, of extraction and depletion. So I did not exclude the idea, but I don't think it will solve the problem by itself. I think we need other major re-questioning of material sourcing to solve the problem.
Well, maybe I can push that a little to my own interests. I've started some field work in a place where the transition to cement is going on right now, and the kind of obsession, fascination with cement from vernacular materials, so that the craziest things are being built out of cement, like fence posts and things that worked perfectly well in bamboo and really didn't need to be in cement. That I'm wondering, and a lot of combinations of extractive work, like people are digging up corals and pouring cement on top of them to make construction materials, and mining sand that then covers up the corals, making them more extractable, and so you can pour cement on top of it made out of that sand. Is there some way that the kind of ideas that you have about the new materials might form some kind of collaborative work with folks like this all over the world, where the pressure is really on them to move to the cement world, but they're still very, they still have lots of knowledge and experience with vernacular materials? Is there some way that one could work across these worlds?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the very good question, also excellent question, because I don't think that what we are proposing is the use of this material all over the world. We're not saying standardization and globalization. We're saying the UAE is a country that has a lot of waste from desalination. We can extract magnesium oxide and from it produce a cementitious material that can replace, initial numbers show 25 to 30% of the current cement market. So this is a good solution for us locally. If you are in Japan, I'd say you have to go find another way, because you don't desalinate. So this material, you don't expect it to be shipped to you. You have to find your own regional industrial waste products that could be recycled in producing architecture. And if your vernacular also works, go ahead and use it. Yeah, it's not at all about the idea of us promoting this on a global level in any way. Sure.
I had a related, actually, query on that, if you in your research found that there were other binding agents that might work other than magnesium oxide, and if those could be found in different places, and kind of make this, bridge this gap that Anna's referring to.
I mean, there are other minerals, but the problem is the insoluble versus the soluble. So it really depends what you want to build and how do you want to build it. There are other minerals that could be used that are actually soluble, just like many of the examples I showed, and those but would produce temporary kind of structures, which are also very viable in certain scenarios where you want to produce architecture that doesn't need to be there for 50 years or 100 years. It could be there just for a couple of years, and still that is great. I mean, Siwa is an excellent example that shows you from soluble salts, it's been standing for 800, 900 years because it is very contextual. It doesn't rain there, so meaning that it's not at risk of dissolving due to the lack of rain. So it really works in harmony with its environment in that sense.
Unfortunately, I think we do have to wrap up. I know it's an unfortunate circumstance. This recording will be available. If you do have questions in the Q&A, or if there are people in the audience who have questions, I do encourage you to bring them to tonight's discussion, with the obvious fallback that neither Anna nor Wael will be there, but we'll do our best to discuss them. And I do hope this maybe starts a productive dialogue between the two of you, actually. And they really are quite resonant projects in a way. They're both interdisciplinary, they're both proceeding from the same assumptions, and I think a really great example of how theory and practice can work together. So thank you so much, both of you. It's really,
Thank you.
Yeah, and, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Can I have Wael's email address? Because I actually would like to ask him some more questions.
Absolutely. I will send it to you via email, or I'll do an introduction so you have each other's contacts.
Thank you. That
Yeah,
would be great.
that was wonderful. Thank you. I just wanted to let you know that Tim Versnow, who I think you might know from UC Santa Cruz, because he was there some years ago, but he put a couple questions into the chat. So we'll make sure those get discussed this evening.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Okay.
you.
Great to meet you, and enjoy the rest of your day.